The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this October 14th, 5 days post-surgery, 6 days, post-surgery. Anyway, interesting. We're going to talk about a lot of things today because we need to catch up, right? So we'll talk about SpaceX. That's a big story coming out of yesterday, certainly an inspiring one. We'll talk about X in Brazil, about CBS, Econ Nobel Prize winners today announced, Israel and Iran, China, Korea, Taiwan. And of course, it's Columbus Day, so we'll talk a little bit about Columbus. So lots to talk about, but some of you, I think, want a quick update on me. I am wearing my thing. What do you call it? My I don't know, brace for my arm. It is here. You can't see it. It's just underneath, cut off by the video. But I am a one-armed YouTube personality. The other arm is barely visible. Can't raise it. All right, so it's just there. Sling. Thank you, Ann. I'm wearing a sling. That's the word I was looking for. Really, interesting, I guess. Generally, right now, I'm not a lot of pain. My range of motion is not very large. Once I go out of a certain range of motion, pain kicks in. But every day, post-surgery, the range of motion is expanded. So I'm pretty optimistic. I've been off, I went off the painkillers. Like for the first 24 hours, there were no painkillers. I'll tell you why in a minute. Then second 24 hours, there was some painkillers. But then that's it. I mean, I've basically been on Tylenol since then. And so I got off the opioids as soon as I could. And so pain has not been a problem. Range of motion's fine. I can manage with one and a half arms. It's not just one and a half arms. But here's the thing. I'm exhausted. I'm really, really tired. I don't want to do this. I want to go crawl into bed right now. And here I am. So I don't know what that is. I guess people are telling me my body's gone through trauma and it needs to recover. And that takes a lot of energy. My Whoop, on the other hand, my Whoop that I wear in my arm, my Whoop tells me I'm fine and I should go out and run a marathon. So I guess I have to go with my body. My body's telling me, take it easy. So the surgery has taken a lot out of me, more than I thought it would. Every morning I wake up thinking, okay, it's over and I'm good, and then bam, I'm exhausted. So surgery's definitely taken a lot out of me, just in terms of energy. I'm completely depleted. I want to sleep most of the day, but part of the problem is not just the surgery. Part of the problem is I have to sleep with this stupid sling. So I'm fine with the sling during the day. It's fine. But sleeping with it is not comfortable. I guess that's the right term. It's just not comfortable. And what that means is you wake up all the time. It means I'm not getting good sleep. I'm not getting a lot of REM. I'm not getting a lot of deep sleep. And that's what really matters for recovery and feeling good and not feeling tired during the day. So that's basically it. It's the REM, deep sleep, recovering from surgery. I have 4 holes in my shoulder, 4. I thought there were only going to be 3, but I guess you need an extra hole. And if you think about it, it's pretty cool. So very small incisions. They've all got stitches. The 4 holes have stitches. They thread like a little robot in there that is manipulated by the surgeon. And the robot inside there does it all. So they don't cut you open. Surgeon doesn't, like in the movies, doesn't take stuff out and put stuff back in. And they go in with these little wires and this little robotic thing, and they keep moving things around and shaping stuff up, and little knives where they chip away. It's really pretty amazing. So I have 4 holes, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 in the back. So 3 kind of in the top front, 1 in the back, 4 holes with stitches. Yeah, you know, and the other thing is I'm allergic to surgical tape. I'm really to any tape they stick on my body. So all the stuff they put on the body. So my main pain thing is I want to scratch my back so bad. It's really itchy. So putting Benadryl. Anyway, that's my health update. Shoulder, I think, is doing fine. Physical therapy still, my doctor wants to see me before then. He's not going to see me for another week and a bit. So probably another 2 weeks before physical therapy starts. I'm eager to get started with physical therapy. I feel like I'm in shape to do that, and my range of motion is there, but doctor said to wait, so I'm waiting. But yeah, generally, things are good. If I can just get that energy back, everything would be great. And then slowly we'll work on range of motion, and one day I'll actually be able to lift my other hand up above my head and maybe do the, you know, motions that are above the shoulder. That's what we're working on. So, and do all that pain-free. That is the goal. All right, enough of my shoulder, but overall, it really is amazing what they can do today with this kind of surgery. It really is amazing. You know, the kind of stuff they can do with, in a sense, minimal invasiveness, with just poking some holes and threading some needles and things like that. So it's really good. It's really good. David has encouraged me to get less sleep so that the body gets used to little sleep and it goes into REM state more quickly. Okay. I don't know, David. I like my sleep. You know, Atia has convinced me I need my 8 hours. I'm not getting them because of this stupid sling, but I'm surviving. All right. I see a bunch of you already have come in. Deworski says, Happy Columbus Day. Thank you, Deworski. Sylvana's $50 sticker. Thank you. Really, really appreciate that. Alex, thank you for the sticker. I think that's it for stickers. Alex, Dino, $50. Thank you, Ron, for everything you do. Dollars, definitely value for value. Appreciate that greatly. So thank you. Why is that? Yeah, that works. All right, let's see. So we got a lot to cover today. There's a lot of news out there, a lot of stuff going on. The election is getting closer, so I don't know, everything's more intense. But also just internationally, we've got obviously Israel in Lebanon, Israel in Gaza, Israel, Iran, and that's like gearing up towards the big crescendo, which will be Israel's attack against Iran, or at least I hope it's a crescendo. We'll see. It could be just like a boop, tapering off, but likely to be crescendo. So there's a lot going on that front. We've also got stuff going on right now as we speak in the Korean Peninsula that doesn't look good. North Korea flexing muscles and getting upset. And then on top of that, you've got stuff going on in Taiwan vis-a-vis the Chinese. So in terms of foreign stuff, and I'm not even talking about Russia and Russia, Ukraine, and everything going on there, we got some major global issues on the table right now that are problematic, to say the least, and need to be really thought about and discussed and analyzed. So a lot, as I said, a lot going on. But let's start. We'll start with the fact that today is Columbus Day. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I misspoke. It's very politically incorrect of me. It's very insensitive of me against somebody, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be. It's actually, as Kamala Harris was very quick to point out today in a speech he gave, today is Indigenous Peoples Day. Today we celebrate Indigenous people. And this is the day in which we are all supposed to curse the day that European explorers found the Americas and established, a colonial, white, supremacist, horrific slave-owning societies in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah, I'm going to go with Columbus Day. Columbus is a hero. Columbus was an incredibly courageous, set out not knowing what he's going to find on the other side, not knowing if he would find the other side, not knowing how vast the ocean was. He had some ideas, turned out to be wrong. He thought the earth was much smaller than it was, and he thought when he arrived in Hispaniola, which is not far from where I am, in the Dominican Republic, he thought he had arrived in India. But the globe could have been even bigger, and that would have, made it almost impossible for him to cross the Atlantic Ocean. And so here's an explorer who took on unbelievable amounts of risk to discover what is discovered. Incredibly intelligent. Incredibly observant, managed to navigate the winds or figure out how the winds worked across the Atlantic. Not an easy feat at all. The trade winds coming from Africa to the Caribbean and then back and figure all this out. Managed to navigate at a time when navigation was very, very difficult. Managed not just to discover kind of the Caribbeans, but also to navigate the Caribbean Sea and navigate all the way down to Venezuela, towards Brazil. Figured out that it was one landmass from Brazil up into kind of Mexico. One of the great explorers in human history, one of a great, unbelievably courageous soul, an amazing leader. You cannot cross the Atlantic on a dinky little boat with sails and primitive navigation without incredible leadership skills in which you motivate and inspire your crew to be able to make the crossing. Columbus was stranded for a year on Jamaica, and he was not liked by many of the other Spanish explorers, so there was a lot of competition, and a lot of resentment, a lot of envy among the different explorers. But anyway, he was a giant of a man. And I know, and I'm going to say something very politically incorrect, but basically at the end of the day, when everything is evaluated and so on, one has to say a broad civilization to expanded civilization beyond the realm of now Europe. Now Europe at that point, 1492, was barely civilized. I mean, let's be really clear here. This is the very beginning of the Renaissance. It's not an accident that the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery are going hand in hand for a variety of historical reasons. This is the time, and the Europeans are becoming explorers. The Portuguese, the Spaniards, they're discovering southern routes, around Africa towards Asia. They're starting to trade with the Asians. Through the oceans, not through the Arabs and the Silk Road. This is a time of real expansion, a time of dramatic kind of geopolitical change. But it's a time you cannot separate kind of exploration from Renaissance. You cannot separate exploration from Enlightenment. A big part of the questioning that starts going on in the Western mind, and some of the questioning of religion that goes on in the Western mind is the discovery of peoples that the Bible doesn't write about and that the ancient didn't write about. So part of what's happening during the scholastic period and during the pre-Renaissance, pre-Enlightenment period is that most people in the West view the Greeks as authorities. Whatever Aristotle wrote is true. It's almost like the Word of God. And yet, the ancients, the Greeks, the Romans didn't write about a land on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. They didn't write about those peoples. They didn't write about those cultures. And yet there were people here who didn't believe in the same God. And it opened up the mind, to the possibilities of what was possible in the world. It opened up, exploration, but it opened up exploration in multiple dimensions in terms of thinking outside of just a narrow perspective that was Europe. So the age of exploration is crucial in the development of Western civilization. But it wasn't that civilized at the time, and this is what one has to remember. The discovery of the Americans happened at the time that the Europeans are not that civilized. They are, to some extent or another, religious barbarians. They have more advanced technology than the locals for the most part, but they still don't have advanced technologies. They're still, for example, in that period, behind the Ottoman Empire in many respects and behind probably the Chinese at that point. But they are laying the foundations for the Western civilization to arrive, to get established, to get anchored, and ultimately to flourish in the Americas. And that is to be celebrated. Now, not everything Columbus did was good, like many of his peers, like almost everybody in that period. He was convinced that Christianity was the path to salvation, and everybody needed to become a Christian. And when meeting the natives who were not Christian, part of the atrocities and part of the bad stuff Columbus and other Portuguese and Spanish explorers did was try to convert them to Christianity, all in the name of Christianity, imposing Christianity on them by the sword. So most of the evils committed by Europeans in the Americas towards the natives were committed not in the name of Western civilization, not in the name of values that we would consider Western, but in the name of Christianity, in the name of religion, in the name of imposing Christianity on the natives or treating the natives as barbarians, primarily because of their lack of Christianity, right? At a time where, again, there was a gap, clearly a gap between the natives and, or at least some of the natives, and the European explorers, but it was nowhere near as big as it becomes later on when Europe really develops an advanced civilization. So Columbus Day is definitely a day worth celebrating, both because of what Columbus represents, the exploring spirit, the courage, the curiosity, the boldness of getting on a dinky little boat and sailing into the horizon without knowing what was on the other side. No satellites, no navigation, no GPS, no iPhones, no communication, no supply chains, just the open sea and your ability to wing it, to figure out how to survive, and your confidence that you will be able to. And we should celebrate that. This is a day to celebrate the age of discovery. Not now, this is how Kamala Harris put it. Quote, this is a day to recognize that European explorers, and I'm quoting Kamala, European explorers ushered in a wave of devastation, violence, stealing land, and widespread disease. Now, I'll note that native populations in the Americas were not particularly peace-loving. They were pretty violent. They stole land from one another on a regular basis, and that they had brought about devastation. And the fact is, there wasn't that much to devastate, although, maybe some of the Inca or whatever civilizations, Central America, South American civilizations had something, but they were also engaged in human sacrifice and a lot of really nasty stuff. The Europeans did bring widespread diseases, but God, we're going to morally blame them for that? That would be kind of bizarre. So we should be celebrating the age of exploration. We should have celebrating the discovery of the Americas. We should be celebrating the bringing of civilization to America without whitewashing it, without pretending that there weren't horrific things done to people, often in the name of Christianity, other times in the name of other, phenomena, racism, other things that are nasty and horrible and should be condemned. But certainly we should face all of those and recognize the good and the evil involved on it, and yet recognize that this was part of advancing, part of progress, part of moving forward was exploring, discovering, and you cannot have an advanced civilization that is not interested in, is not curious about other worlds, other places, and wants to push the frontier of knowledge, push the frontier of human exploitation of nature, of the world out there. And we should definitely celebrate that. So it's a day we're celebrating. And in that context, I think it's super appropriate that our modern day explorers achieved such a huge feat just yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the videos, and if you haven't, go to whatever social media platform you use and find them and watch them. But SpaceX yesterday achieved this amazing feat of catching the booster. The booster of the rocket came down after it detached from the main portion of the spaceship. It came down at an unbelievable speed, right? And then it had its own little, firing things that slowed it down, stabilized it, and dropped it down, not on the ground. It never touched the ground. Dropped it down just to the right spot, adjacent to this tower, where, what do they call it, chopsticks? Where this arm came out and clamped it and caught it. I mean, this is one of the greatest engineering achievements ever. It is stunning in terms of the accuracy of the whole process. The fact that we can do any of this stuff, the fact that SpaceX can do any of this stuff, it was truly phenomenal, amazing, stunning. And by the way, something that Elon Musk just a few years ago predicted SpaceX would be able to do, and people laughed at him. People laughed at him. Right? So how appropriate is it that the day before Columbus Day, a modern-day Columbus, a man who wants to take us to Mars, wants to explore the planets, a modern-day explorer, a modern-day company that wants to expand the human scope of knowledge, take us to the planets, expand human civilization, achieves such a feat. Now, note, the booster is 71 meters high, 233 feet. It's the equivalent to taking a 15-story building, crashing towards Earth, managing to slow its descent, controlling that descent so that the angle is exactly right, lowering it to exact point where you want it, stopping it so that an arm can come out and clamp it and catch it. It's, I don't know, it's stunning. I mean, it's much more likely this would drop down as a missile, destroy the tower and the pad. So you watch this thing, and you have to watch it from a variety of different angles to get just the whole wonder of it. From its descending from the sky at incredible speeds to its slowing down, straightening itself up, and doing this, and the little firing of what do you call those? The firing of the whatever in order to make this drop. It's stunning. So you should watch it over and over again and marvel. This is the equivalent of crossing the Atlantic. I mean, it's not as risky in a sense of people's lives are not at stake here, but it's as exciting and as dramatic of an engineering and human achievement as that was, right? Retro rockets, thrusters, thrusters. I mean, truly amazing. Anyway, so SpaceX has already reduced the cost putting up a ton of stuff into space by over 90%. Over 90%. With this, now you have a reusable spacecraft. Take off, all the parts can come down, new, space thing put on top, send out into space within hours. The idea is that you might be able to drop the cost of taking stuff into space by another 90%. And that is just stunning. And look, this is a massive engineering feat. In terms of the nitty-gritty of the engineering, I don't know that Elon Musk had anything to do with it. But at least according to how it's reported, this whole way of landing it is an Elon Musk idea. The idea that it's possible is Elon Musk. The challenge to the engineers is Elon Musk. The audacity, just the ability to project a big goal like that and to challenge his engineers with such a thing is all Elon Musk. I mean, Elon is, when it comes to this stuff, without a question, one of the great business leaders in American history, ever. I mean, setting audacious goals, bringing teams together, and setting goals that are audacious and ridiculous and stunning, but are doable. And then putting the teams together to make them happen. Get it done. Just truly stunning. And if this is all Elon Musk ever did was SpaceX, he would go down as one of the great entrepreneurs, business leaders in all of human history. But of course, he also dabbles in half a dozen other companies, right? One of them, at least, probably to his detriment, but most of them really for the positive. So yeah, this is truly amazing. It'll be a huge achievement. Some people are saying it's the biggest leap forward in space flight since the 1960s. I don't know enough about space flight to tell you that, but it was necessary in order to lower the cost down another 90%. Lowering the cost down another 90% is a necessary, not sufficient, but necessary step toward getting man to Mars. So if Columbus got man to the Western Hemisphere, it is Elon Musk who will be remembered. There'll be an Elon Musk Day as the man who made it possible to get man to Mars. So stunning achievement. I encourage everybody to look at it. I wish this was all there was to say about Elon Musk, but sadly, it never is. Now, to celebrate this, to congratulate Elon Musk on this, the California Coastal Commission is one of the most fascist government entities in America today. We'll have to cover it in a show in more detail one of these days, but the California Coastal Commission has unbelievable power over California generally, over land use, over property rights, unelected, just little fascist, was founded by a guy who was arguably a real fascist. Anyway, they voted 6-4 just a few days ago to reject SpaceX's proposal to increase Falcon 9 launches from 36 to 50 at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. I guess the California Coastal Commission has a say on how many launches SpaceX does because they do it on the coast. I don't know. But because it has, quote, environmental consequences, because the California Coastal Commission is a fascist, power-grabbing, all-encompassing agency that just devours power and, will inject itself into any dispute and conflict out there that it can. And it has authority, it turns out. Now, so they won't allow SpaceX to expand. Another reason why Elon Musk companies are fast moving out of California, leaving California. It is absolutely disgusting. But what's absolutely unequivocally, shockingly, even more disgusting than the sheer fact that they have the power to do this and they chose to do it, is the reason they gave. The reason was not, save the whales, the porpoises might die, a snail might be destroyed. Because at least then you could say, okay, they have some standard, which is, life on planet Earth. No. The standard was that they don't like Elon Musk's political activities, particularly on X. So they don't like the political stance he's taking. They don't like the fact that he's supporting Trump. They don't like the fact that he runs X the way he does and says the things that he says on X, and they're punishing his speech. Notice, government entity, punishing his speech with increased regulations. Now, this is in my view, a pure case of violation of the First Amendment. This is censorship. This is exactly what censorship means. This is penalizing a business for what it says, for what its leader says, on another business platform. Supposedly Elon Musk sued today over this. I hope he did. You never know with Elon. He's quick to say he sues, but it doesn't always happen. I hope he does. I hope he's suing on First Amendment grounds. I think he has a really good case. Now, I'm sure they have cover and they've got other reasons why they won't let him launch the rockets. But the fact that they would include this is so disturbing, so disgusting, that, they should be sued. They actually should be put in jail. What's my source for the statement? I'd have to Google it again. I saw it first on Twitter, where I get most of my news these days, and then I cross-referenced it, and I found, I think, the statement from the California Coastal Commission. Let's see if I can. So far, Elon is threatened. He hasn't actually filed yet. Let's see. Here's a Politico story. The title of the story, and we can get in. California officials cite Elon Musk's politics in rejecting SpaceX launch. I mean, you'd think they'd be smart enough, even if this was the reason they stopped him. You'd think they'd be smart enough not to actually say so. They give this, Department of the Air Force, or this is the Coastal Community, unwavering commitment to preserving the California coastline and the precious species that reside there. So they give the regular environmentalist BS, but it does sound like they make a statement. I'm looking for the exact statement in terms of his politics. Now, we'll see if he actually sues and whether, how that plays out. I mean, here's a quote from the commission chair, Carolyn Hart. I really appreciate the work of the Space Force. This is part of what SpaceX does, because they're working with the Department of Defense there. But here we're dealing with a company, the head of which has aggressively injected himself into the presidential race. And he's managed the company in a way that was just described by Commissioner Newsom. Newsom is one of the commissioners, that I find to be very disturbing. Anyway, you can find, I'm sure, you can fact check me and let me know if I got the story wrong in some way. All right, so that was the good news on Musk, and inspiring, and so good news that Musk could do a lot of bad things and we would forgive him. I would forgive him for doing them, just because he's so brilliant at what he does here, right? But, one of the things I found interesting was, remember the story about Musk and Brazil, and how Brazil banned Twitter, and Musk was standing up to them, and he was standing up for free speech because he refused to block the accounts that this judge in Brazil wanted blocked, and he refused to pay the fine, and he kind of gave them the middle finger, and basically Twitter was blocked on August 30th in Brazil, and it was gone, right? And I didn't hear anything about that anymore. And it's interesting. I mean, there's basically been no news about that. And so I was wondering, so I looked it up a couple of days ago, and, a couple of days ago, actually, again on Twitter, a thing posted with a headline saying Moraes, that's the judge in Brazil, authorizes X to resume operations in Brazil after network complies with legal requirements. And I went, I haven't heard of this. What's going on? And it turns out that back on September 26th, Elon Musk's, Twitter, asked to be reinstated in Brazil after it had complied with the judge's orders. So in less than a month, basically Twitter backed off. They complied. They blocked the accounts that Brazil had asked to be blocked. They reinstated their person in Brazil, their legal representative in Brazil, who they had fired in order to protect them from legal liability vis-a-vis the courts in Brazil. And they paid a 28.6 million real fine, which is about, divide that by, I guess, about 4, right, to get what that is, right? So not a huge fine, but still, they paid it. In other words, Musk folded, and I get why he folded. I mean, Brazil is a very online place. The people, basically, there was a big demonstration after X was withdrawn, but nothing was going to change. The Brazilians didn't rally in quite, a revolution didn't happen. Most Brazilians just switched to other platforms. And a lot of money that X had in Brazil was frozen, and it meant a lengthy legal case to get the money, and it didn't look like they were going to win because the legal case would be in Brazil. And they just decided that the Brazilian business was too valuable to walk away from. So he caved. Now, the reason I say this is because I praised Musk for taking a principled stand against the Brazilian authorities when he did. And it seemed principled, and it seemed like he was going to stick to it. But I also said at the time, it is a weird stand, given that, X is, blocked in China, and Musk has no problem doing business in China. X blocks people in other countries that the authorities ask it to block, and they continue doing business in those countries, like Turkey. So X has this policy of usually acquiescing to what politicians want. What's so extraordinary about Brazil? Why did he make a stand here? Well, it turns out nothing really. And it also turns out that on Twitter, there is a lot of excitement and a lot of retweeting and a lot of elevation of content when that content is celebrating Musk and on the side of look how great Musk is, and when the content is not so favorable to Musk, like in this case, he caved, the story doesn't really have a lot of legs. It doesn't really resonate on Twitter. So the story that Musk stood up to the Brazilian judge was huge, blew up, was everywhere. The story that he caved was, I mean, I saw one little thing mentioned. So just saying, this is the thing with Musk. Huge achievements, objective, real, worthy of praise, achievement, and then quite a bit of smoke and mirrors. Quite a bit of smoke and mirrors. So just beware of getting too excited about something he does. Is it real? Will he stand by it? Will it hold for how long? Unfortunately, very, very hard to tell. So there you have it. I mean, that's my one more Musk story, it turns out. So there is a conspiracy theory going around. It has it was, I think, created or promoted by an anti-Trump groups, but picked up by some pro-Trump groups that are worried about this conspiracy because they really worry about it. And this is a conspiracy that's trying to explain why Silicon Valley and so many people in Silicon Valley are suddenly so pro-Trump. Why is Musk so pro-Trump? I mean, it's not like Musk is MAGA or has been in the past MAGA. Musk, until very recently, was a Democrat and not a fan of Trump at all. And Silicon Valley and many of the people who now in Silicon Valley show support for Trump have been never Trumpers in the past, and not even Republicans. Many of them are from the left. What is going on here? Why is all these people so pro-Trump suddenly? And here is the conspiracy theory. Basically, the idea is that if Trump wins, that very soon after he's inaugurated, after he becomes president, J.D. Vance is going to invoke the 25th Amendment. And with Democrats, potentially having the House and the Senate, it's got a good chance of passing. And Trump will basically be kicked out of the White House. J.D. Vance will become president. And basically, J.D. Vance is, if you remember, a venture capitalist, part of the Peter Thiel gang, part of the Peter Thiel network of venture capitalists. And this is basically a Silicon Valley takeover of the White House and American politics, led basically by J.D. Vance and Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, who can't be president because he was born in South Africa, was born outside the country, he will be installed as basically chief advisor and to J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance and Elon Musk will basically run the government from there on, using their Silicon Valley friends and doing it for the sake of the kind of Silicon Valley. So that is the latest conspiracy theory. It's all over the place. It's supposedly promoted by the anti-Trump Lincoln Project, but a number of kind of leftist groups picked it up, but then a bunch of others on the right picked it up, worried for Trump and telling Trump beware. And and part of this is driven by the fact that they believe that J.D. Vance is less popular than Trump, and people are maybe afraid of billionaires like Elon Musk, so they don't want the government to land up being run by Elon Musk, although Musk would be at least an interesting president, right? I mean, all over the place, but interesting. Yeah, so I thought I'd catch you up on that. I thought that was kind of crazy, interesting, weird, and I think very, 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 I mean, improbable is an understatement. Not likely to come about, just like every other conspiracy theory, or not everyone, but most conspiracy theories out there, particularly during election time and what's going on during elections. All right. How are we doing in time? All right, we still got the Nobel Prizes. Yes. Oh, we got to talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates and CBS. Ta-Nehisi Coates and CBS. That was super interesting. And then we'll talk about Israel and Iran. Yeah, a lot to say about what's going on in Israel, Hezbollah, Lebanon. The United States, by the way, has just accelerated its demand for American citizens to leave Lebanon, even though Israel hasn't bombed Beirut in like 2 days. They've given them so a lot going on. Then we'll talk about Korea and Taiwan. Yeah, I mean, God, a lot to talk about. All right, let's see. Anybody have like a upper, something I can take to give me some energy? All right. Let's see how long we can do this. Yeah, we've got a good amount of super chat questions. Thank you guys, and good dollar amounts on there, and we got some really good stickers as well. So let me just catch up on the stickers because those I don't want to fall behind. Mark Anderson, thank you. Paul Cohen, twice, thank you. Islam Ali, is that right? Did I read that right? Islam Ali, thank you. Anonymous user, thank you. Donna, thank you. Aquinas, thank you. Mary Aline, thank you. And Alex, and we got back to Sylvanos. Thank you again for the $50. Yeah, you too can support the show with the sticker. We got 180 people watching here, about 200 on YouTube. So a good number of people watching right now. All right, Econ. Today, the Econ Nobel Prizes were announced today. And three winners. And I can't pronounce this guy's name, which is a problem, right? Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson won the Nobel Prize in Economics for work on institutions, prosperity, and economic growth. I mean, I will say this in support of these three economists. I won't say much in support of them, but in support of them, is that what they write is in economics is quite understandable. Particularly Darren Acemoglu can also do really heavy, intense mathematical modeling stuff. But they basically won the Nobel Prize for work that they have written, that they've written books on that are easy to read books. So you can actually find them and read them and engage with their ideas. You don't have to be an academic economist to engage in their ideas. I'd also say, and really the linchpin here is Darren Acemoglu, who co-authored a lot of the papers with Simon and James, but really is at the heart of this. And he wrote, I think, the most influential of the papers, also wrote the most influential of the books. He wrote papers like The Economic Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy. He wrote a book called Why Nations Fail, which is pretty popular. Another one by The Narrow Corridor, Power and Progress. is a readable, very readable book. So these are economists who actually write in English for the layman, in entertaining and engaging prose, right? So in that sense, I will compliment them on doing that. They also, they also are, they also have a lot of, or some good things to say. So fundamentally, and this is how the Nobel Prize is being taken, they basically say that in terms of explaining economic growth and prosperity, let's say in the West, or even in countries that were non-Western countries, but they were exposed to the West through colonialism or other ways, you can explain that prosperity and economic growth, you can explain it through the institutions that they embrace. The institutions that they embrace. So democracy is an institution. Property rights they consider as an institutions. And generally, cultures that embrace institutions that include property rights and democracy or political liberty, if you will, are economies that do better than places that don't embrace those, which has a strong element of truth. But their foundation is kind of top-down institutions. Where the institutions come from, who knows? Why they're adopted, who knows? Why the West even came up with them, in a sense, who knows? They just happen. So it's called institutionalism. Douglas North is another economist, I think a Nobel Prize winner, who is associated with this institutionalist school of economics. It is quite, there are good things about it, in the sense that, first of all, it's good in the sense that they are trying to explain progress and growth. They think progress and growth are good. And partially they're looking for explanations beyond kind of, beyond simplistic ones that have to just do with, particularly economic phenomena or germs or guns, germs, warfare, or things like that. They're looking for something more substantive. And institutions, particularly if you think of institutions in terms of property rights as an institution, property rights as this abstract achievement, that's good. Now, at least Darren Acemoglu, I don't know about Simon and James, is definitely a left-of-center economist. He's definitely, while he believes in property rights and institution of economic freedom, he also believes in some central planning, a large degree of regulations, a mixed economy. He's a big, big, big believer in the mixed economy. As a lot of kind of center-left, center-right economists. Right? They're believers in a mixed economy. It's just a question of the ratio of government to freedom, how much freedom you allow. So what else did I want to say about them? Not bad in terms of economics. Now, I will say this. Darren Acemoglu is when it comes to academic economics, is just a powerhouse. I mean, this guy has been cited 250,000 times. He publishes 5 papers per year, but not just 5 papers out there. 5, from the academic economic perspective, leading, meaningful, top journal, highly cited papers every single year. Most people don't publish 5 in their whole life. I mean, most economists don't publish 1. This guy publishes 5 a year. He got his PhD in 1992. about 2 years before I did. And he's a publishing powerhouse. So you got to give credit. He's got incredibly productive, super smart. He's published in a variety of different fields, wrong on a bunch of different things, including on the primacy of institutions. There's a good critique of this attitude by another economist who I admire, an economist who I admire. I don't think she's ever going to get the Nobel Prize. And some of you might be offended by me calling her a her, but that's how she wants to be called. So Deirdre McCluskey has written a critique of institutional economics, which I think is very good. I think she's right in the sense that ultimately what matters are ideas, particularly moral ideas, things about around wealth creation, about individual success. I would add about reason. She would disagree with me. But it is ideas that matter, is ideas that drive economic progress and economic development. One of which those ideas happen to be about property rights, but it's a derivative idea of something much more fundamental, which is individual rights. And that's more fundamental to that is the concept of individualism. And Deirdre gets much of that. Darren does not, and the institutionalists do not. The institutionalists, as a consequence, tend to be statists, partially because the state establishes institutions. It's a top-down view, although there is some element to the evolutionary growth of institutions, but that gets to be Hayek, where anything that's evolved is good. But that's obviously wrong. I mean, the mixed economy has evolved, and it's not good. Top-down managed economies have evolved, and that's not good. There's good stuff, and it's worth reading the work of these Nobel Prize laureates. I won't say that often when it comes to Nobel Prizes in economics, sometimes just not worth the effort. But they're fundamentally wrong, and they've been critiqued from within the profession and from the free market perspective by people like Deirdre McCluskey, who I think has done a very good job critiquing this institutionalist view of economic growth. So congratulations to 3 economists for winning the prize. I actually want to read. I want to read one of those books. Once I read the book, I'll let you know more about it. All right. Let's see. Okay. I think you've all seen now the interviews that Ta-Nehisi Coates has given about October 7th and about Israel. He's got this book out where he basically admits to it being 100% one-sided on the side of the Palestinians, a complete hack job. He knows nothing about Israel. He knows nothing about the Middle East. And yet he's written a book completely supporting the Palestinians, calling Israel an apartheid state, siding with the Palestinians across the board. And yet he's completely ignorant of so much of what happens there, the history and everything else. And he admits so. It's not like he's hiding this. He actually admits it. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a history around this. He is so engaged, or I don't know if you know who Ta-Nehisi Coates is. We talked about him quite a bit during Black Lives Matter movement. Ta-Nehisi Coates is an interesting black intellectual, a complete creature of the grievance mentality that sadly so many black intellectuals in America have. Coates is a beautiful writer. He writes beautiful prose and has used that to express his frustration with America. And often some of it is very effective in case of what he says and how he says it, and in terms of bringing out real issues about America and about its attitudes towards race in the past. But Coates is also very bad on these issues. You know, one of the examples of this is his attitude towards 9/11, where he basically says he doesn't care. He writes, "Damn it all, I could see no difference between the officer who killed Prince Jones and the police who died, or the firefighters who died. They were not human to me. Black, white, whatever. They were the menace of nature. They were the fire. They were the comet, the storm, which could, with no justification, shatter my body. So, they're all part of America, which is responsible for slavery, which is responsible for violence against blacks, and therefore 9/11, any kind of horrific, is justified, and he cannot, or at least he can't feel sympathy for anybody. No matter what the color of the skin, he can't feel sympathy for anybody who is a victim of this if they're not willing, I guess, to fight for reparations for blacks. I mean, Ta-Nehisi Coates is a big, maybe probably the most vocal and articulate intellectual voice for reparations. Anyway, that is Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he's been on a book tour, and he did an interview with CBS, and he also did one, later on with Noah Smith, and a lot of this stuff, it's just ridiculous. I mean, in the Noah Smith interview, he says basically that he cannot guarantee that if he was in Gaza, and if he was as persecuted as the Gazans are, that he wouldn't go out and rape and pillage and murder on October 7th, that he wouldn't have joined the people doing that. And in that sense, he couldn't condemn it. I mean, this is just evil stuff, horrible stuff that Coates has been spewing in the various media outlet all over the place. Anyway, that's a big story. It relates to Ta-Nehisi, but I also wanted to point out a story about CBS, and that is in the interview with CBS, the interviewer pushed back against Ta-Nehisi Coates. He did what a good interviewer does, particularly when a book is unbelievably, crazily biased. And the interviewer pushed back, but not in a friendly, journalistic, friendly interview style. Coates did not seem defensive, did not seem offended. Trevor Noah, not Noah Smith, sorry. The interviewer was Trevor Noah. But anyway, some people at CBS felt offended by the fact that Ta-Nehisi Coates was being pushed back. Now, part of that is because I think the people at CBS are pro-Palestinian and how you push back about somebody standing up for the Palestinians. But I also think that a big part of the pushback was because Ta-Nehisi Coates is a hero of kind of Black Lives Matter and the whole movement around Black Lives Matter and black identitarianism and grievances. And therefore, how dare you push back against Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's this? And the interviewer, who did a good job, I thought he was a little mild, was reprimanded for how he conducted the interview, that he was too aggressive. Too aggressive towards Ta-Nehisi Coates. Should have been more accommodating. So that's pretty disgusting and awful. And of course, unsurprising, it's CBS News. It's part of the big three that have been basically biased to the left for, I think, since they came into existence. But it's just gotten worse over time as the whole media landscape has shifted leftwards, at least the big media. But this is CBS, so it shouldn't surprise anybody. But then I found this other story that I found, wow, this is kind of interesting. So it turns out CBS is about to be sold. CBS is part of, and I think this is right, is part of Paramount. right? It's, I mean, just, yeah. It's part of Paramount. And Paramount is just about to be sold, including CBS, to a company called Skydance. Skydance is owned by David Ellison. David Ellison is the son of Larry Ellison, one of the richest people in the world, a billionaire, founder of Oracle. Larry Ellison, who has provided a lot of the funding behind Skydance's purchase of Paramount, which includes CBS. Larry Ellison is a huge supporter of Israel, has been for decades. Financial supporter, ideological supporter. Larry Ellison is also, one of the founders of one of the great entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley, a gazillionaire, and a free market guy, generally, broadly speaking, and very, very pro-Israel. So soon, the people of CBS are going to be owned by a very pro-Israel, and I think Larry Ellison is probably also pro-Trump, but certainly pro-markets, not pro-the left on economic issues and on issues like Israel, and yet Larry Ellison is going to own CBS. It's like Elon Musk owning Twitter, something like that. So rumors have it that once the deal goes through in the first quarter or early second quarter of next year, the Ellisons are thinking of blowing up CBS, basically replacing everybody and changing a lot of stuff. Remember, CBS also owns 60 Minutes. CBS is a news powerhouse. And it's going to be really, really, really interesting, right? To see how all this goes. Skydance is buying CBS and Paramount from Summer Redstone. Summer Redstone is the daughter of the media magnate Redstone, who built this massive empire. Anyway, it's going to be really interesting how CBS is going to evolve once it has these new owners, once Skydance is the new owner of CBS. But this is one of the beauties of capitalism. You don't like the way media is run? Start a competitor. Maybe it's easier just to buy one of the media companies instead of starting a competitor. Maybe just doing it. Right? Yeah, I know that Larry Ellison attacked Microsoft during the antitrust in the 90s. A lot of people attacked Microsoft back then. A lot of so-called free market libertarians did. It doesn't change the fact, so did Mark Andreessen, so did, what's his name, who ran Sun, Sam McNeely. They all attacked Microsoft, sadly. But doesn't change the fact that, Larry Ellison is considered a small L libertarian, certainly not a leftist, and somebody who could very well change the media landscape in America. Now he's getting old, and I don't know his son's politics, and I don't know what his son intends to do, but I did find it interesting that CBS in a precarious position right now. All right, we went a whole hour plus without mentioning Israel. So let me give you a quick rundown on where we are in terms of Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas. We're not going to go into depth here because I just don't have the time. There's so much to say, and we've talked about it a lot, and I'm sure we'll talk about it tomorrow. That is, I expect Israel to attack Iran either tonight or tomorrow night. Either tonight or tomorrow night. I also expect Israel to resume attacks on Beirut tonight or tomorrow night, or maybe later in the week. But this week, a lot is going to happen this week. Attack on Iran is going to happen this week. resumption of attacks on Beirut are going to happen this week. I don't know if you heard, but the United States decided to deploy a anti-missile system in Israel. It will be deployed in the south of Israel, probably to protect Israel's nuclear program. So Israel has a so-called experimental nuclear reactor. It's a nuclear reactor where they make the bombs, as far as I know, in the south of Israel. It might be deployed there. It's the THAAD system, THAAD. It's a whole system of radars, missiles, detection, and deployment. It doesn't shoot them down above the atmosphere, so it's not a replacement for an Arrow 3, but it is a competitor to the Arrow 2. It's below once the ballistic missile enters atmosphere. It basically means that Israel does just not have enough Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems to cover the whole space, particularly given that if they attack the Iranian nuclear program, they're worried about the Iranians attacking the Israeli nuclear program. And my guess is that this THAAD is stationed to help knock down the missiles coming in from Iran. I think Israel was a little bit worried that about between 30 to 40 missiles from the last Iranian attack actually got through and landed. Some of them they let land on purpose. Some of them they did not. They tried to shoot down and couldn't. And that worries them. And they don't know which ones will get through. And they're worried about, again, the nuclear facilities and maybe other sensitive facilities that Israel wants to make sure it's protected. They need more ground-to-air missile defense. The United States is basically giving them a system manned by American personnel. So there will be American boots on the ground managing this facility. Now, just to give you a sense of these things and how complex they are, this THAAD system requires 100 people. I think it's 100 people. 100 American military personnel will be manning the system. It's a defensive system. It shoots missiles off the ground. They'll be joining at least 200 other American troops, American military personnel who are in Israel in the same location in the south of Israel, working on undisclosed activities. I do not know. But this is not the first time that they have. Somebody says they have the laser beam. Laser beam supposedly is not ready yet for deployment, not on the Israeli side and not on the American side. Both are working on laser beams for knocking missiles out of the ground, out of the air. Neither one is yet ready for deployment. So they're both, I think the Israeli one is about a year away from being deployed. It would be great if they already had it. I mean, there's some reason to believe that one of the reasons Hamas launched the attack they did when they did, one of the many reasons, is because Israel was getting a significant boost to its ability to knock missiles out of the sky, particularly because of the laser program. So Hamas decided they couldn't wait anymore. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So where we are right now, the U.S. is deploying this system. Israel is expected to attack Iran. There are conflicting rumors about this. One rumor is the Iranians have told the Americans, and the Americans have told the Israelis, don't make it significant. Don't make it a big deal. Do something symbolic. You can maybe hype it up in the press, but do something symbolic. And the Iranians have promised to just back off. Just back off. That's one version of what's going to happen. But the second version that I think is getting repeated more is that Israel is going to inflict a significant attack on the Iranians, that the Iranians will respond and this will precipitate more back and forth, and that Israel is ready for that, and part of the deployment of this missile system is in anticipation of that. It's still not clear whether Israel is going to attack nuclear facilities, whether it's going to attack oil and gas, although if I had a bet, I would say they won't, or whether Israel's primarily going to attack missile facilities, drone facilities, and command and control facilities of the Iranian military. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel does several rounds of attack, with round one being targeted at taking out the aerial defense systems that the Iranians have, the S-300, and to the extent that they have any S-400s, so as to give the Israelis free rein in Iranian skies. And then once they have free rein, choosing particular targets to go after and destroying them. That is a possible tactic. We will see. It's going to happen in the next few days. We will know one way or the other very, very soon. It's also the case that probably as a consequence of American pressure, Israel has stopped bombing Beirut over the last couple of days. Now, yesterday, a Hezbollah drone hit a dining hall in a military complex, an Israeli training military complex where young Israelis train for the Golani unit in the Israeli military. And 4 kids died, 4 of these soldiers died, 61 were injured. The drone was an Iranian-made drone, another reason why Israel might hit the Iranian drone manufacturing facilities. It was an Iranian-made drone from Hezbollah, and Israel will want to respond to that. And I wouldn't be surprised if it targets Beirut in the coming days. As a consequence, the United States is calling on all American people, citizens, to leave Lebanon. It could also mean them telling Americans to leave Lebanon, that America is going to join in with the Israeli response, maybe not in the first wave, but ultimately in some of the waves to follow. And then they're afraid of reprisals by Hezbollah on Americans living in Lebanon. So that could be another reason why the United States is calling on its citizens to leave Lebanon. I don't know. I'm speculating, but all of that is a possibility. Nobody knows whether the Biden administration will join Israel or not in going after the Iranians, whether they'll join in the first round or they'll sit it out, maybe join in the second round. I don't know. Again, I'm skeptical, but it should be on the table given their announcement today for Americans to leave Lebanon as soon as possible. And then finally, well, not finally, and then so one other thing I want to say. Oh, one other thing I want to say about this drone attack on Israel. About something like 12 months ago, no, maybe 10 months ago, 11 months ago, the Ukrainians came to the Israelis and said to them, you know, you're getting attacked by Iranian-made drones. We are the world experts on Iranian-made drones and how to defend against them and how to deal with them. We'll teach you. We're happy to teach you about our experiences with Iranian-made drones, because the Russians, of course, are using Iranian-made drones against Ukraine. And the Israelis, which I think is completely fits what I know about them, basically poo-pooed the whole thing and like, we don't need your help. We're like the IDF. We know everything. I don't know how true that is. I don't know exactly what happened. I came across the story, but it rings true to me. It rings true to me. And it's consistent with why October 7th happened. It's consistent with an arrogance, a false confidence, a kind of an attitude that thinks you know everything and you understand the enemy and you know how to do everything and you don't need help. Very bad attitude. And unfortunately, I think Israelis have it, particularly the Israeli military, particularly the Israeli political class. And it's partially what led to October 7th, when people within the intelligence community warned and warned and warned and warned and warned. The political and military leadership of Israel basically said, nah, you guys don't understand Hamas. That's not it. It won't happen. So sad unfortunately. Sad if true that Israel did not take the advice of the Ukrainian, and a few soldiers have suffered, lost their lives as a consequence. Finally, I think the most meaningful story out of the weekend was a story in the New York Times. And I know, I'm not supposed to read the New York Times. I know if you read the New York Times, you basically are categorized as an ignoramus, know-nothing idiot. But, when it comes to investigative reporting, you got like a handful of publications that do any investigative reporting. And if you don't read them, you don't know anything. And the New York Times does some good and meaningful investigative reporting. So does, on occasion, once in a while, the Washington Post. They've done some excellent pieces. So do other mainstream media outlets. And if you don't read them, you don't actually know some of the most important stuff that's going on in the world. You just don't. It just doesn't make it into the rest of the news. And if it does, it's only making it to them through a filter, having been brought to the rest of the news through the New York Times. Anyway, there was an excellent article this weekend in the New York Times. Basically, the New York Times had access, has been achieved access, bribed somebody, I don't know, achieve access to secret documents that of Hamas meetings. These are minutes, basically. It turns out Hamas keeps detailed minutes of their meetings. And these are detailed minutes of Hamas meetings that happened in 2021, primarily 2022 and 2023, before October 7th, in which Hamas is planning, considering when, how to launch the attack. They got these minutes from Israeli sources. These are documents that Israel, found, stole, discovered from Hamas, right? They were seized by the Israeli military and, quote, obtained by the New York Times. And they give a real detailed report of the planning for October 7th. So if you're interested in October 7th, if you're interested in what happened and how it happened, what Hamas was thinking before October 7th, highly recommend this article. It was on the New York Times during the weekend. It's called Secret Documents Show Hamas Try to Persuade Iran to Join its October 7th account. So one of the things that come out clearly in this is that Hamas knew, at least a year ahead, that Iran knew and Hezbollah knew that Hamas was planning the October 7th, that indeed part of the reason it happened in October, not earlier, was the constant ongoing attempts to rope Iran and Hezbollah into 100% support of Hamas. So it shows that the Iranians cannot plead ignorance, that this was a plan that ultimately was supported by Iran and Hezbollah. Iran was hesitant to join. They didn't approve exactly of the timing, and they refused to give Hamas a definitive answer about it, which kind of ultimately, led Hamas to just launch it without full participation from Hezbollah or Iran, although Hezbollah, of course, supported Hamas on the day after, at least in somewhat symbolic way. Originally, the October 7th attack was planned for the fall of 2022, a year earlier. But the group delayed executing the plan while they tried to persuade Iran and Hezbollah to join. As they prepared the arguments aimed at Hezbollah, Hamas leaders mentioned that Israel's internal situation, the fighting inside Israel, the apparent turmoil created by the Netanyahu government, particularly the one to overhaul the judiciary, was one of the reasons that they thought this would be a great time to engage with Israel. It presented Israel in a weak battle position. In July of 2023, Hamas dispatched a top official to Lebanon, where he met with senior Iranian commanders and requested help with striking sensitive sites at the start of the assault. So the idea was that Iran would launch a missile attack against Israel at the same time. The Iranians told Hamas that while Iran and Hezbollah were supportive in principle, they needed more time to prepare. The document also says that Hamas planned to discuss the attack in more detail in subsequent meetings with Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah's leaders, but it's not clear if that meeting ever happened, if that was ever, the detailed presentation to Nasrallah ever happened. Hamas did feel assured that its allies had their back, that they would receive from them what they call general support. But they decided they would have to go ahead in spite of the fact that they did not have their full commitment to be involved. They did this for a few reasons. One, political turmoil within Israel. Two, the fear that Israel would deploy its new air defense system. We're talking about the laser system. Before the assault took place, a big part of the assault required the launching thousands of rockets into Israel as a distraction. In addition, it is clear that Hamas, as well as Iran, but the Hamas had it clearly in their sights, that the attack was geared at disrupting the efforts of Israel to normalize its relationship with Saudi Arabia and the entrenchment of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Israel's attempt to exert greater control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All of these were part of Hamas's considerations in terms of timing. They've given up on getting full support from the Iranians at Hezbollah, but it was clear to them they had to act. If they didn't act, they would lose some of these advantages. I found really interesting, and it shows that they think strategically and they can think long-term in opposition to the West, who cannot think strategically or long-term. Hamas deliberately avoided major confrontations with Israel for 2 years, from 2021, in order to maximize the surprise. That is, they actually wrote this. We must keep the enemy convinced that Hamas in Gaza wants calm. And they did. Netanyahu bought into this completely. So they put on an act for 2 years, doing everything they could to convince the Israelis, everybody associated with it, that they were good, everything was calm, they wanted peace, or they wanted at least the status quo, and they had no negative intentions. And they did their best to control Islamic Jihad and other elements inside the Gaza Strip from antagonizing the Israelis. Finally, what this report also shows is that it's clear that the Hamas leadership in Qatar, Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated by Israel in Iran, knew about this plan well in advance, and backed it and supported it. So they can't deny it, they can't walk away from it, right? So, Hamas was sophisticated. They viewed the political situation in Israel. They knew how to keep themselves quiet. Now, note that the Israeli spies and Israeli intelligence had an inkling that this was being planned. And yet, Israeli commanders in senior positions in intelligence and in the military, and importantly in political positions, all basically concluded that Hamas was satisfied with their position. They did not want confrontation with Israel, and that all these warnings, all these things would indeed never happen. They dismissed the idea that Hamas had the ability or the intention to carry plans like this out. So it is going to be interesting to see how ultimately Israel does a proper intelligence assessment and figures out exactly what went wrong in its intelligence community and what lessons it learns, and whether Benjamin Netanyahu will ever take responsibility, whether the political class in general will ever take responsibility for what happened on October 7th. It seems unlikely, given what's happening today in Israel, but we will see. So fascinating story, worth reading the whole thing if you're interested in this. There probably is a lot of chat about this in Israeli media as well. It really is fascinating. All right. Let's do this quickly. I don't have a lot to say, but I just, in a sense, want to give you a heads up because you just never know where these things go. But there is a real tension on the border between South and North Korea. Supposedly, somebody in South Korea approved the dropping of leaflets from drones above North Korean territory. In response to that, the North Korean government has put its artillery on the border with South Korea on high alert. Now note that Seoul, South Korea, where a bulk of the South Korean population lives, is within artillery range. I'm not talking about missiles, ballistic missiles, anything like that. Artillery range of the North Korean military. It's put them on alerts. There's also rumors that they are implementing a plan by which they blow up all the roads and bridges that link North and South Korea, supposedly to prevent a South Korean invasion into the north or something like that. Anyway, there's just a lot of tension on that border. And we're talking about a North Korean leader who, in spite of the love affair he had with Donald Trump, well, maybe this is another indication of this, is a complete whack job, is a complete nutcase. We don't know what he will do. We don't know whether there's anybody there with even a semblance of rationality. We just don't know what could happen. So it's just a border to watch. North Korea has nukes. South Korea, via America, has nukes. And everything's very close. Everything's very imminent. One mistake, and you could get real violence there, and it could get very ugly very quickly. I doubt anything will happen, but we got to watch it. And at the same time that that's happening, interestingly enough, or maybe not accidentally, China has unexpectedly, this is a surprise, I don't think anybody saw this coming, has started a part 2 of its military exercise, drills, mimicking an invasion of Taiwan, practicing an invasion of Taiwan. You've got 125 Chinese jets, 17 Chinese Navy ships, and 17 Chinese Coast Guard vessels that are taking part in what's called Joint Sword 2024B. A was a few months ago, where they are completely surrounding Taiwan this morning. So, again, I don't expect China to invade Taiwan. But given how much of the American Navy is deployed right now in the Middle East and not in the South Pacific or in the South China Sea, given how distracted the world is in Ukraine and in Israel, in the Middle East, it's super unlikely, but possible. I mean, if you were going to start a war, you'd pretend it was an exercise first. Again, I doubt it, but just to raise the temperature, just to raise the boiling point, and maybe tell the Americans, hey, if you attack Iran, see, China does not want Iran attacked. One of the reasons is it gets a lot of its oil from Iran. So China does not want Iran attacked, particularly not its oil facilities. It could be signaling to America, if you attack Iran, you are very vulnerable in the Pacific. Anyway, I don't think either of those scenarios are going to amount to much, but they're worth watching, worth being careful of. And we do the news here, so it's worth covering on the Yaron Brook News Show. All right, I think that's enough. An hour and a half, an hour and 35 minutes of news. That's more than anybody should be willing to tolerate. So thank you. That is the news for October 14th, 2024. All right, let's see. So we're doing great on the Super Chat today. Thank you, guys. We've made our 3-hour goal. We'll see how many hours we actually go, but we made the 3-hour goal. I raised the goal to $1,000 because somebody suggested it on the chat, and what the hell, why not, right? Make up for the revenue I didn't make when there weren't shows, but of course, when there are no shows, why should he give me revenue? So it makes sense that I get no revenue when there are no shows. But anyway, we have, thank you. We got a lot of Super Chat questions, a bunch of $50, $100, and $20 questions. We got a bunch of stickers. I've already thanked many of the people who've given stickers. I can thank a few more. Mike Dial, thank you. Wes, $50. Really, really appreciate that, Wes. Coming through again with a high-valued sticker. Martin Anderson and Paul, I think, so we're caught up on the stickers. You too can participate. You can even do $2 sticker. You don't have to do a $50 sticker or even a $10 sticker. You can do $2. You can do that right now. All right. I do want to note, I'm doing this event in Colorado. The link to the event is below. It's in the description. It's in the description for this video. It's an event 2 days after the election. If you're in the Denver area, if you're somewhere in Colorado and you don't mind coming to, I think this will be a fabulous event. There are not a lot of tickets, right? It's limited capacity. Okay, so when I click on the link that I posted there, it says the link was not found. But Miroslav has posted the proper link in the chat. So you guys have the link in the chat. Maybe Miroslav can add it afterwards to the description. Links are horrible in YouTube. Anyway, it is on November 7th at 5:30 to 8:30. There'll be a reception before. There'll be kind of a panel with me and Tom Cranwitter and moderated by Mike Williams. It'll be about the election, kind of the outcome, future prospects. What can we expect? Can you be positive? Is there anything to be positive about? Tom is fantastic. I think you'll really, really enjoy listening to Tom. He's not an objectivist, but he's really an interesting guy, and he knows the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, inside out. He's very friendly to objectivism. He's become, I think, more and more pro real capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, the more he's been exposed to me over the last 20 years that we've been doing lectures for the leadership program of the Rockies. So if you're in Colorado, I think this is going to be a fun event. Tom and me riffing off of the elections, riffing off of each other, Mike adding to that and asking us questions and prodding us and challenging us. I just think it's going to be a fantastic event and a lot of fun. It's at a great location on the lake, Cherry Creek, I think. In Cherry Creek, Cherry Creek Marina, the Cherry Creek Marina, Pelican Bay. You can sign up. It requires signing up. It requires paying. There are not that many seats left. I think we're shooting for like 80, and there's only like 25 seats left. So sign up now. Prices will go up at some point. When we get very close to 80, we're going to jack up the price. So if you want to come, today's the day to sign up for it. It's an Eventbrite. It's called Beyond the Ballot, an evening with Yaron Brook and Tom Cranawita. And you can find it, again, on Eventbrite. And the link is in the chat. And it's going to be a blast. Join us. You got to come. You got to come. Let's see. What else did I want to say in that connection? Yes, I just want to remind you that this show is sponsored by the Ayn Rand Institute and Ayn Rand University. And Ayn Rand University and Ayn Rand Institute put on an Ayn Rand conference every year. The next one, not the next one, the one after next is going to be in Austin, Texas. In late February. It is anybody serious about the study of objectivism, particularly students, can get scholarships to attend. The scholarships include travel expenses, so you should think about coming to Austin from anywhere in the United States. They'll pay for your flight and they'll pay for a hotel. So you should apply. It's a great opportunity to be exposed to some of the leading minds today in objectivism, to be exposed to some of the best teachers in objectivism, and to delve deeply into the objectivist philosophy. You'll get to take classes from Greg Salamieri and Ben Baer and others, and to hang out with them and ask them questions and interact with other students of objectivism. And it's just a great environment and a great place. Austin, Texas is always fun. And late February is a great place to get out of the cold of the north and go to the cold of Texas. Cold of Texas is not as bad as the cold of the north. So you should come. You should come. You can find information about that at aynrand.org/start here. The show is also sponsored by John Bobbin, who provides advice and recommendations in terms of health, training, workout, longevity, integrates it all. Phi Life is the YouTube channel, Philife. Phi Life is a sponsor of the show, and I'm going to have him on a members-only show, not this week, coming weekend, probably the weekend after that. I will let you know once that is finalized. And finally, Alex Epstein, the authority on energy, fossil fuels, climate change, environmentalism. Check out his Substack. You will find it unbelievably stimulating and interesting and beneficial to your own life and to how to approach these big policy issues in the world. It's alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. All right. Let's hit the super chat. All right. Let's go with David, $100. Thank you, David. Read Charles Freeman's book based on your recommendation. Many thanks, both invaluable sources. So these are Charles Freeman's books on the closing of the Western mind and the reopening of the Western mind. Excellent, excellent books. High on my recommendation list for anybody interested in Western civilization, its meaning, its origins, its foundations. Those are the books to go to. Michael, also $100. Thank you, Michael. Ayn Rand has had a lot of influence in the business community. Has she had any in the scientific world? You said how groundbreaking it would be for physics to win a Nobel Prize and credit Ayn Rand, but is her epistemology necessary for scientific breakthroughs? Well, obviously not, given that we've had Galileo and Newton and Einstein and a bunch of great physicists without Ayn Rand's epistemology. So it's not necessary, but it should be a comparative advantage. That is, science should be easier. Making breakthroughs in science should be easier with the right epistemology, or that is, with a fully worked out explicit epistemology. All those scientists had the right epistemology, but it was not fully worked out, and it was not explicit. It was implicit. So I do expect in the future there will be major scientific breakthroughs, and some of the attribution for that will be to her epistemology. Now, as far as I know, has there been influence in science? I don't know. I really, really, really do not know. If there is, it's still anonymous. I still haven't, the people achieving the breakthroughs in physics, A, the breakthroughs have not been recognized, and B, if they have been recognized, they haven't been attributed to Ayn Rand's philosophy. So hopefully we'll discover that some of the breakthroughs in physics today are attributable, and hopefully we'll get bigger breakthroughs that are clearly, because the authors of the breakthrough will attribute them to Ayn Rand's epistemology. But we'll see. I'm hoping and think that will happen. Hasn't happened yet. Let's see. Our next question. So this is about the Hannibal Directive, which is the name of a procedure supposedly by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, to prevent the capture of Israeli citizens by enemy forces. According to one version of this, that the kidnapping must be stopped by all means, even at the price of striking and harming our own forces. That is supposedly the directive. Now, the question is that Mark asks, can you explain what the Hannibal Directive was? Do you think it was enacted on October 7th? So I don't know that there is such a thing as a Hannibal Directive. That is, I don't know that there is such a directive within the Israeli forces. My view is they should be. That is, I would support one. And that is a directive that says you cannot allow the enemy to take hostages. The hostages become a massive political and military obstacle to achieving victory. I think the fact that Hamas has somewhere between 50 to 70 live hostages today is a political and military obstacle to achieving victory over Hamas right now. And it has been since the beginning of the war. And you've got to prevent the taking of hostages, even at the cost of those hostages in some cases. I also think that once the hostages are taken, in order to, you have to act as if they're not there. They're not hostages. You have to win the war. There has to be a primary directive. There has to be a primary purpose. I've talked about this many times. Do I think it was enacted on October 7th? No, I don't. I see no reason to believe that it was. I don't even know if it's real. I don't know. Maybe it is, but I don't know that it's real. I don't see any evidence where Israel killed its own people in order to avoid them being taken hostage. Maybe there's one case where a house in which hostages were being held was bombarded by a tank, and ultimately it was, the Israeli ground forces swarmed it, and all the hostages were killed. I suspect that was more incompetence than any doctrine. There was no way they could be led back into Gaza. They were there in a house. It was a hostage situation. It should have been dealt as a localized hostage situation. The Israelis in the past have been very good at really getting hostages out. But I think in the chaos, the panic, the mayhem, there was October 7th, people made big mistakes. And in this one, the way they dealt with this house, a lot of people died, probably shouldn't have died. But I don't think it was the invocation of the Hannibal Directive. Again, I could be wrong very easily because I'm not an expert on what happened that day. And I'm not an expert on what the directives are, particularly top secret directives within the Israeli military. I do not know them. All right. Let's see. All right, we have a bunch of $20 questions left and a bunch of $5 to $10 questions. You can still ask questions. We've extended the goal to $1,000 just to be ambitious. But we've made our goal for the 3 hours, so we're good. Remo says, I just finished watching The Last Dance. It was amazing to watch, and I am not even a basketball fan. I just got a lot of joy in life out of watching and admiring greatness in sports, business, acting, movie making, and art. Now, The Last Dance was that the Michael Jordan TV series? I think it was about the Chicago Bulls. Yeah. I mean, I loved that series. It was great. It was amazing to see excellence, to see people who take excellence seriously, non-cynically, passionately, commit themselves to it, and achieve it. And those Michael Jordan Bulls were amazing. And I think they were amazing because Michael Jordan drove them to be amazing. His passion for excellence, his commitment to excellence, his commitment to being the best in the world drove his teammates to be the best that they could be and drove them to work as a team and to win those championships. And, it took probably the greatest basketball player in history to, achieve that. And truly spectacular. And it was a fun series to watch, really fun series to watch. And I am a basketball fan, but it's fun. So thank you. Wow, Lucinda just came in with a basically $100 sticker. She says, let's get to that $1,000 goal, guys. So she just brought us within $86 of that goal. So 4 plus a little bit $20 questions and we're done, right? So Lucinda, thank you. Really, really appreciate all the support. Michael, of course, is probably the biggest supporter, my biggest supporter on YouTube. It's too bad on Super Chat. It's too bad YouTube doesn't give me a Super Chat by person, like at the end of the month, who are the biggest supporters. We could make this competitive. Like I could say, hey guys, Michael's given X, number 2 is given Y, number 3 is given something else. Let's make this competitive. I don't have those numbers, but clearly Michael's at the top of that list. I'm pretty sure, and consistent. Michael says, are some people rotten to the core, or is there always good in everyone, just repressed and buried deep down? No, some people are rotten to the core. I'm not a Christian. Some people are rotten to the core. They've made a commitment to evading reality. They've made a commitment to evil. They made a commitment to ignoring the facts, and they are not moving to that commitment, and they don't care. Then they usually that leads them to some form of nihilism, and they just want to see the world rot and burn, and they want to see other people suffer, and they're bad. And there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot reach them. And it's just a commitment to evasion, a commitment to non-reality. Lucinda, I'm skeptical about the idea of prison's main purpose being punishment. Isn't it better to think about prison's main purpose as means of keeping innocent people safe from criminals, with punishment being secondary at best? Well, I think the two are the same in a sense. Prisons are institutions of justice. They are institutions that provide justice. Now, when you're a criminal, what does justice demand? It demands that you be kept away from potential victims. It demands that you be kept away from, people who you might do harm. It also demands that you be punished for what you've already done, that there be retribution. Partially because you did something bad, you should suffer for it, and partially because it has the power to convince marginal criminals not to do what you did, because they see there's a punishment. So punishment is an act of justice. As an act of justice, it serves to punish. It serves as a, what's the word I'm looking for? Not a restraint, a deterrent. Thank you. I got the word, deterrent. I'm thanking myself. It serves as punishment, a deterrent, and it serves to keep the criminal away from innocent people. It serves all three. Now imagine somebody killed, and you are 100% convinced I'll never kill again. The circumstances were such, it's a one-off. It's a one-off. They murdered somebody in cold blood, but it is a one-off. Would you let them free? No. They have to suffer the consequence of their actions. There has to be retribution. And part of that retribution is a deterrent for other people who might do the same thing as a one-off. So your purpose is justice, and the purpose ultimately of justice is the protection of the innocent, the protection of the good. I mean, that's what virtue is for, protecting you. I mean, is, the virtue of justice, to protect you from evil and to connect you with, to make it the good available to you. Therefore, damn, I thought I didn't like you, but seeing you like this is touching me. Touching you? Why? That's a little bit of that, altruism out there. I thought you didn't like me either. I mean, I'm not sure I like you being touched by me. Maybe I like you more not liking me. I don't know. It's very confusing, Nifel. Ian, new K-drama, startup, quirky, cute, slightly cringy, but inspiring characters that achieve their values. Characters are somewhat more mixed than Iteawon Class, but enjoyed it. Took me about 6 episodes to get into. Ooh, 6 is a lot. All right, I'll have to, maybe I'll check it out. I'm looking for another Korean show to get into. Startup. Okay, thank you, Ian. Appreciate it. Lucinda, how would we justify a prison keeping a murderer past the point of them posing a threat, i.e. after they visibly rehabilitated, without implying that government has power beyond keeping us safe from force and threat of force? Well, since people have free will, you don't know if somebody's completely rehabilitated, right? You have no access to know what's inside their thoughts. But I think the reason is what they do in the future, to some extent, is irrelevant. What they did in the past is relevant. And if there was a magic pill that they could take and they're rehabilitated, and you were convinced somehow there's no free will anymore somehow, what happens to the next murderer? They'll murder, take the pill, they're rehabilitated. No. The government's job, part of the government's job, part of its responsibility in keeping us safe from force and threat of force is to make murderers disappear. This is why I'm not in principle against the death penalty, because that's a definitive way of making them disappear, and it should be relatively cheap. It's just I worry about executing innocent people. But I'm not, if we could get around that somehow, if we could increase the level of innocent certainty, then I wouldn't be against it. So, no, punishment is valid. It's valid to punish for bad behavior as a way to teach the person and other people in the culture about the consequences of action. And that's the one realm in which the government should teach. Or he says, I just finished Mr. Sunshine and I loved it. I had a massive positive impact on me. Excellent. I guess I told you guys, it's the best show ever. I'm thinking of rewatching it. Maybe I'll start Startup just to see if there's something new. But Ian, you should also talk about Musk blocking a journalist for linking to the latest Vance dossier after Trump campaign asked him to. As usual, these people are total hypocrites. I haven't seen that one. I'll check that one out. Lucinda, read an interesting history today. Article called A Woman's Work on the improvements in the role of women in the KKK. Not sure if it's significant enough to be a topic for the show, but I recommend to anyone interested. KKK, I'm not sure what we're talking about. This seems weird. I'll have to check it out. Don't know what that refers to. All right, Christian, me and my friends had the misfortune to meet Nazis, white racist, white race shirt, Hitler salute, the whole thing, in a pub in Sofia, Bulgaria, I assume. We left after exchanging some words with them. Was it wrong out of fear not telling them what we think about them? I mean, it depends on the legitimacy of the fear, right? Yeah, I mean, you don't owe the world to stand up to these people if there's real possibility that they would inflict physical harm on you. So, I get it. On the other hand, if everybody's afraid of them, nobody ever stands up to them, then that emboldens them, and then you get stronger, and then you get bigger. And it also means what it means that you exchange some words with them, right? Was the exchange of words suggestive of anything positive? I assume not, but it obviously wasn't very negative. So I don't think you're morally obligated. So it depends very much on the circumstances. But it's great if we can speak up. So speaking up is the most important tool we have. So if we have the possibility of speaking up, it's great to do so. But I understand you're in a foreign country, and you may be outnumbered, and they're bigger. Just walking away, I get that. I don't think that is wrong, right? It's very much context driven. Dworski, happy Columbus Day. Thank you, Dworski. Iron Meerkat. But your left, get well soon, P.S. Gaza must be destroyed. It is my left arm. I wonder if that's suggestive of changing my politics or something like that. I don't know. Left. It's all that left stuff. All right. Michael, I am super chatting while walking in downtown San Francisco. My shoes have tested positive for poop. Sorry about that, Michael. Yes, there are parts of San Francisco where you need to be very, very careful where you walk. And the poop is probably human poop. That's the horrible thing about it. But yes, avoiding downtown San Francisco is probably a good idea. Although I still think that 5-10 years from now, the place will be cleaned up and it'll be a pretty cool place to live. And if you buy now when it's cheap, you'll do well. Mary Benz, philosophy at work. I am going to catch your starship with my chopsticks. All right. That was pretty explicit on this PG-rated show. I don't know if we can allow this. Mary says, happy Columbus Day. Happy Columbus Day to you too, Mary. Michael Sanders, is all the modern philosophy designed to paralyze the good and embolden evil? I don't think it's designed to do that. I don't think that in any way is, it's not a conspiracy. It's the effect that it has. It's the result. It's the result. But I don't think it's designed. Lucinda says, I'm not 100% convinced by your argument. concentrates my question on prison. I have to think more about it, although I want to make clear that I'm not motivated by any sympathy towards killers. Also, KKK means Klu Klux Klan. Yeah, but I don't know what that has to do with women's work. Role of women in the Klu Klux Klan. Sounds interesting. Not sure what it means. You've got to think about it. But a big part of what justice is what do you call it? Making sure that people, providing the incentives for people to not engage in that activity. It's a big part of what the justice system is engaged in. It's why, for example, you don't get the same sentence for rape as you do for murder, even though arguably you should. Partially because if you did, you incentivize the rapist to murder its victim, or you're not providing a deterrent on the rapist murdering the victim. So deterrence plays a factor in sentencing. Deterrence plays a factor in punishment. And you cannot ignore deterrence as a feature of justice. Now, I also think punishment, for the sake of punishment, is a feature of justice. But you've also got to take into account deterrence. Christian says those Nazis were a German rock band. They looked dangerous, so they didn't call for them out on their shit, but left the pub. Yeah, I think that makes sense. If somebody looks dangerous, there's no reason to get in it, engage with them, right? And you say German, you say rock band, that sounds dangerous to me just there. German anything, well, certainly rock band. Augustinus, Elon is a testament to immigration. Yes, to the positives. Lucinda says, just to be clear, I don't think rehabilitation should be the primary goal of prisons. Just skeptical that the focus on punishment as the alternative to my current view. I see both as secondary. I also don't know that rehabilitation is particularly effective. There's very little evidence of the effectiveness of rehabilitation. Islam Ali, is it wrong for Israel to have flattened Gaza on 10/8? No civilians or Hamas left, speedy recovery. Yes, because I don't think it was necessary. It should have flattened as much of Gaza as was necessary in order to achieve quick, speedy victory. In that sense, yeah. But that, I don't think, means killing everybody in Gaza. Colin says, thank you for the Barcelona recommendations. My wife and daughter loved the markets and had an amazing meal at Fizmula. Yeah, Fizmula is a real keeper. It's a restaurant I would go to every week if I lived in Barcelona. It's also, the original Fizmula is in Madrid. So if you're in Madrid, check it out. Fismuler. It's just got good food. It's not super fancy. It's not super anything. It's just, the food is just really, really tasty. Really good. And interesting. And unusual. Tasty, interesting, unusual. That's the kind of food I like. Eric, does Musk owe a city to shareholders? Well, doesn't Musk owe it to shareholders to cave in Brazil? Losing business in Brazil surely doesn't maximize shareholder value. P.S. You're a rock star, Yaron. Good luck recovering. I mean, it really, really depends. Now, if you're going to be inconsistent about it, then yes, then there's no justification for standing up to Brazil. If you're going to be inconsistent, sometimes stand up for principle, sometimes not. Because, yeah, you might as well maximize shareholders' wealth. Inconsistency certainly doesn't do any good for shareholders. You could argue that long term, having a consistent policy of never banning people because the government demands you do so is a policy that gets you more revenue, more committed adherents, more committed fans, more committed participants, and that is a shareholder wealth maximizing position. But then you have to be consistent, which Musk is clearly not. So I'm not surprised he caved to Brazil. I'm not saying it was wrong, given that he doesn't cave to anybody else. And I made that point. He doesn't cave to anybody else. Why is he caves to everybody else? Why the hell is he caving to Brazil? What's special about Brazil? Augustine Menkel says, here's an upper, Yaron. The $10 is supposed to give me the boost of energy needed for the show. Oh, God, look how Lucinda just dominates the super chat today. Thank you, Lucinda. We're, by the way, $57 away from achieving the $1,000 goal that somebody in the chat came up with, I endorsed, and Lucinda has inspired many of you to support. Lucinda says, have you looked into the recent war on drugs development concerning hemp? I read an interesting Forbes article on it and thought it might be a good topic for a show. I'll look into it. I have not. I've not looked into it in terms of hemp, but there's a lot of backtracking from the people who've legalized marijuana about wanting to recriminalize it. There was also, of course, the recriminalization of hard drugs in Oregon, where that experiment didn't work, or at least didn't work by their standards. I mean, drugs is complicated and you have to do it right. And the only way to do it right is to create a real free market. Really get the government out of the business. Lucinda, do you like cheese, Yaron? If so, what are your favorite types of cheese? Ordered some premium cheese that will hopefully arrive tomorrow. I do like cheese, particularly hard cheeses. I like things like gouda. It's not Gouda, it's gouda cheese from the Netherlands. But Comté, like French Comté. So like I love goat cheese, of a variety of different types of goat cheese. The challenge is that I'm kind of allergic to it, or at least I think I'm allergic to it. Doesn't stop me from eating it, but in small quantities. And I think the softer the cheese is, the more likely it is that I'm allergic to it. So I eat it in small quantities. I love cheese. I love like a big cheese platter and a bottle of wine. But I've cut down a lot on how much wine I drink. I never drank a lot, but I've cut down even more. I'm becoming convinced about the evidence that alcohol, pretty much in any quantity, is not good for you. But I still have a glass of wine once in a while. I used to have a glass of wine almost with every dinner, and now I've cut it down to like twice a week. But the idea of a glass of wine and cheese is very enticing. But I think I'm a little allergic to cheese. Not too bad. So I don't do a lot of it. But yeah, cheese is delicious. Lucinda, out of all the objectives, works not written by Rand or Peikoff, what's your favorite, meaning not which is the most valuable generally, but which has been most valuable and enjoyable for you personally? Not written by Ayn Rand or Peikoff. God, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, How We Know by Harry Binswanger, incredibly valuable. Enjoyable. You know, some of the work, I'd say some of the work written in Alan Gotthelf and Greg Salamieri's companion book. There's an essay by Onkar Ghate, for example, on what Ayn Rand means by you make your own soul, you build your own soul, which I think is an incredible piece and very enjoyable and important piece. But, I have to think about it. But the companion is incredibly valuable. lot of Mayhew's books and the novels, some of the essays there are phenomenal. So I'd say those. That's what comes to mind right now. Tara Smither's work on ethics, but I think The Companion and some of the essays in there probably are my favorites. Boris just did 150 shekel, $40 from Israel. Thank you, Boris. He did a sticker, brings us $10 within $10 of our goal. So we're almost there. Robert earlier did $2 on the sticker. You guys can do $2. 5 people doing $2, and we're there. And we had Jeffrey do some, and Boris did 150 shekel earlier as well. So he's done 300 shekel total. Robert, yeah, all right, so we're good. This is great. Thank you, guys. Enric, I'd like to send this super chat and future ones, not trying misspelling, which doesn't always work. Can the super chat be sent to otherwise like Facebook, FBX? I mean, if you want to ask me questions, the other way to do it is through, you could send it by PayPal. Facebook, I'd have to start monitoring Facebook. I'm wondering, I still need a solution to taking super chat funds, questions with live, that does not go through super chat. I don't have a solution right now. You can also ask it questions not live and just send me, just do it through PayPal. Glenn just did $50 sticker. Thank you, Glenn. Really, really, really appreciate it. We're now solidly into $1,000 target within, we've crossed it. We're done. Thank you. All right, 4 last super chats. Friend Harper says, the optimist says, the cup is half full. The pessimist says the cup is half empty. The engineer says the cup is twice as big as it needs to be. That's pretty funny. I like that. Nevfell says, what's wrong with me seeing some value in your well-being? Some value, only some value. I'm just giving you a hard time, Nevfell. I mean, I appreciate you wanting my well-being. Thank you for caring. I mean that. Thank you. Robert, yes, if anything leads to rehabilitation, public safety, proper punishment, all of the other goals of a prison system, it is precisely justice. Yes. So justice is the concept that has to be chewed. Linda says, I have Thomas Bowden's booklet, The Enemies of Christopher Columbus, highly recommended if still available. I think it is. People should Google Enemies of Christopher Columbus by Thomas Bowden. It's probably out there, maybe downloadable somewhere. Maybe the Institute, I don't know. I don't remember kind of where it landed up. But hopefully it's still out there. Yep. Very enjoyable. All right, guys. I am going to figure out how to replenish the energy, which I am lacking because it just got sucked out of me during the show. I'm surprised I lasted this long, and I'm hungry. That's the other thing. Since the surgery, I'm constantly hungry. I'm doing no exercise, i.e. burning no calories, and yet eating. And I'm going to explode here. I'm going to grow so much. But we have 2 more super chat questions. I have to do that. Anyway, so I have to go eat. Hunter says, rewatched you and Ben Shapiro and had a light bulb moment. It starts at 12:55. When he asks you about you deciding for him what his self-interest is, you bring up universal values. Clarified a massive hole for me. And answer number 1 question I got from non-objectivist. Show on it. Interesting. So you want to show on how values can be universal and yet personal at the same time. That is how you can make a generalizable comment about human values and yet be an advocate for individualism and individual freedom and the freedom to pursue their own values. I like that. I like that idea. Anybody want to sponsor that with $1,000? That'd be perfect. Great show to sponsor for $1,000. All right, why has my mouse disappeared? Oh, because it's way over there. I am going to put that on my list for potential shows. Why did that not copy paste? I'll have to rewatch what I actually said on Vance because it sounds like it was good because it answered your question. But thank you for the $100. That is amazing. Really, really appreciate the support, Hunter. So thank you. All right, Lucinda. It's a woman's work because it brings to light how women played a large part in the work done to empower the Klan. Interesting. Also deals with KKK women role in suffrage movement to some extent. That's also interesting. Also, remember, women also played a huge role in the what do you call it, prohibition, and you know, women can play an oversized role in politics and in driving men to do things like with the KKK. That's interesting. So where did you find this? History Today article. I have to look for that. That is interesting. Ryan says, great to see me back. Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be back. Thank you, guys. You are incredibly generous today. Really, really, really appreciate it. I'm going to go rest for a little while and eat some stuff. I expect shows throughout the week. I'll even do some shows on the weekends to kind of catch up because I need to catch up. There's a certain number of shows I need to do in a month to make the kind of income we need. So I will do some weekend shows, but if we do a few shows like this, then maybe I don't need to catch up. But anyway, we will, and thank you for the best wishes, for the recovery wishes, and you will be able to watch me recover because hopefully I will have even more energy tomorrow and the days to come and be complaining less about hunger and things like that. See you all tomorrow. Oh, don't forget, I really want to remind everybody. Oh, too bad a lot of people have left already. I should have reminded you earlier. On Wednesday evening, 7 p.m., I'm going to have Greg Somnieri on. And Greg will be talking free speech, but it's a great opportunity for all of you, Michael and many of you who ask philosophical questions and don't get satisfying answers from me, to ask Greg, even this question that Lucinda asked about justice, punishment. I mean, it would be really interesting to hear what Greg has to say about that. So any answer that you have not been satisfied by your answer to, bring it on with Greg. I mean, it's an opportunity to really go for 3 hours with one of our top philosophers and really ask him all the questions you have on epistemology, on ethics, on anything, on politics. On anything, particularly questions that either I can't or haven't satisfactorily answered. So Greg, 7 p.m. Wednesday. I'll probably do a quick news show early that day and then do the interview in the evening. I think we'll see if I can do 2 shows in a day, but definitely 7 p.m. Wednesday, Greg. See you all then. Bye, everybody.